Good morning, grade 11. We are commencing our grade 12 poetry, and today we will be starting with the very last poem, which is entitled Touch by Hugh, Lewin. I've chosen to start with this one because I feel it's quite simplistic, and it's a good way to just ease our way into our grade 12 poetry. When I am done with the analysis, you will find questions, contextual questions based on the poem on Google Classroom, and I'm going to expect you to answer those questions in well-developed sentences. It's really important that you do the consolidation, which is through answering the questions. We're going to read the poem together, and then we will get into a line-by-line analysis. Touch by Hugh, Lewin. When I get out, I'm going to ask someone to touch me. Very gently, please, and slowly touch me. I want to learn again how life feels. I've not been touched for 7 years. For 7 years I've been untouched, out of touch, and I've learned to know now the meaning of untouchable. Untouched, not quite. I can count the things that have touched me. 1, fists. At the beginning, fierce, mad fists beating, till I remember screaming, "Don't touch me, please, don't touch me." 2, pause. The first 4 years of pause. Every day, patting paws, searching, arms up, shoes off, legs apart, prodding paws, systematic, heavy, indifferent, probing away, all privacy. I don't want fists and paws. I want to be touched again and to touch. I want to feel alive again. I want to say when I get out, "Here I am, please touch me." So if I had to start off and I had to ask you what comes to mind when you think of the word touch, being the teenagers that you are, I'm sure you're going to think of it in quite an intimate fashion. And yet touch is such an important sensory experience for us as humans from the time when babies are born. Touch is such an important part of their development, and even through all their years of toddlerhood, it's a new experience, a new sensory one every day. So I want to start off by looking at the author. Hugh Lewin was born in 1939 in what was known then as Eastern Transvaal. Clearly this was under the old apartheid regime, and you know what life was like during apartheid. He studied at Rhodes University, and suffice to say that Rhodes is a very liberal university. It always has been. And so there a lot of his interactions with people would get him to see life in quite a different fashion, and he would not be in agreement with the apartheid policies. So he became a freedom fighter, and he was found guilty of sabotage against the South African government, and he spent 7 years in prison from the mid-1960s to early 1970s. He then went into exile in 1971, and you know exile means you are quite literally forced to flee. And he returned to South Africa only in 1992. He then became a freelance media trainer. So this poem is very clearly based on his experience while he was incarcerated. Clearly it was not a very easy time, being Caucasian, being liberal, being against the apartheid regime. And I think it's important that we start off by looking at touch. What is touch actually? It is the sense by which textures of objects, by which texture and other qualities are experienced. And he starts off in line 1 by saying, when I get out. And so those last 2 words, get out, they are a clue that tells us he has been incarcerated. When I get out, I'm going to ask someone. And the word someone is so general. It's not referring to anyone in particular, no specific person. And it's almost like saying, I'm going to ask anyone. So when he says, I'm going to ask someone, we hear the note of almost desperation in his voice. I'm going to ask someone to touch me. Now, it sounds like such a basic thing to touch you, but look at the explanation that follows. To touch me very gently, slowly. So we've got 2 interesting adverbs here, gently and slowly. And these adverbs, they indicate a tender, sensitive engagement that is required from the speaker. He doesn't want to be touched in any old fashion. He has something specific in mind. To touch me very gently, slowly, touch me. The fact that it is repeated indicates how badly he is searching for kindness. He is looking for a generous spirit from the one who touches him. He says from line 7 to 9, I want to learn again. And again conveys the sense that the speaker has almost forgotten what it is like. I want to learn again how life feels. Now there's a difference between living and existing. And while our speaker has been incarcerated, he's merely been existing. It's simply been a matter of day by day survival, just managing to cope, just managing to get through the day. And now that he is out, he wants to live. He wants to live life to the fullest. And I think that it's important to note that he has a great need. He's got this vacuum that he wants fulfilled. When we go to stanza 2, he elaborates a little bit and he says, I've not been touched for 7 years. And what he is implying is that he has had no normal human contact for 7 years. He repeats line 2 in line 3 and he says, for 7 years. He is emphasizing the length of time, which must have seemed far, far longer than just 7 years for our speaker. For 7 years, I've been untouched. Now, I want you to note that in line 13, we have untouched. In line 14, we have out of touch. And in line 18, we have untouchable. And all three of these variations of the word touch, they are all negative in their connotations. So we start off by looking at untouched, which is quite literally the opposite of being touched. And figuratively, it means that it has not affected the emotions. He has been untouched. In line 14, he says, out of touch. So literally, he's talking there about being isolated from others, your family, your comrades, maybe even some of the time your fellow inmates. And then figuratively, I've been out of touch. He's been out of touch, meaning he's unaware of what has been happening in other situations. For example, if you are out of touch, meaning you haven't been on social media, you haven't been having telephonic communication with someone, you are out of touch, you don't know what's happening. And I've learned to know the meaning of untouchable. Now, untouchable literally meaning unable to touch. You want to, you stretching, you cannot touch. Now, untouchable has another deeper meaning. And what the figurative meaning of untouchable is that society dictates that you are avoided, that you are shunned. And the example that springs to mind is in the Hindu culture, they have a caste system. In fact, it's supposed to be banished, so it's not there legally, officially, but it does still happen. And in the Hindu caste system, they had the higher caste and they had the lower caste. And what this means is that the lower caste cannot ascend to certain position. They can never fall in love or marry someone from a higher caste. You are literally untouchable. So there is no contact. A very sad state of affairs. And he says, I've learned to know the meaning of untouchable. A person who is despised. We go to stanza 3, and in stanza 3 he says untouched, not quite. We have that punctuation there. We have the dash which shows that he interrupts his statement about being untouched to say, no, that's not true, not quite. I can count the things that have touched me. And so stanza 3 is quite important because it holds together stanzas 1 and 2 and stanzas 4 and 5. And it refers to what was said in stanzas 1 and 2, and then stanza 3 prepares us for what is to follow in stanzas 4 and 5. So it's like the conjunction, it's holding them together. And stanza 3, I would like you to see it as having the centralizing function. So in line 21, he says, the things that have touched me. And the emphasis is on the word have. In stanza 2, he hasn't been touched, and then in stanzas 4 and 5 are the things that have touched him, albeit in a very negative way. Stanza 4 starts off 1, fists. And fists here are referring to the physical ill treatment he endured in prison. Fists associated with aggression, with harshness, with pain. Fists that beat him into submission. At the beginning, fierce, mad fists. Beating, till I remember screaming. So line 27, the screaming, was his response to the beatings. Now, we're not talking about a little slap on the wrist. We are talking about abusive beatings, not to discipline, but to injure. Till I remember screaming, "Don't touch me, please don't touch me." So I feel that those lines encapsulate so much pain, so much heartache, so much isolation, that you are on your own and it's you against these forces, and you have no chance of defending yourself. In stanza 5, he lists the second kind of touch that he has experienced: paws. Now, paws suggest animal rather than human attributes. Paws. An animal has paws. A human has hands. But he uses the word paws very deliberately, because the paws are, of course, referring to the hands of the officers, the wardens, whoever he was in authority that he came into contact with. But paws also suggest ill treatment. Paws are quietly intrusive. The paws are demanding. The paws are demeaning. Every day. And I think that just those two words in a line by themselves say so much. Every day. The paws demoralize him far more than fists do. Patting paws. Look at that alliteration. Patting paw. It's a soft sound, so it's not harsh the way the beating is, but it's still quite demoralizing. Patting paws. So from line 32 all the way till the end of stanza 5, he's talking about the bodily searches. Patting paws, searching. Arms up, shoes off, legs apart. What is he saying? This is part of imprisonment. There is no privacy. Legs apart. You are being palpated all over. Again, we have the second alliteration, prodding paws. Systematic, heavy, indifferent. And the word indifferent is so significant because it means that there is no feeling, there is no emotion in the person, from the person who is doing this invasion. And they are not interested in the speaker as an individual. So the alliteration that we find in line 33 and in line 36, it suggests the quiet intrusion of the searching hands. And the alliteration emphasizes the indignity suffered in prison. You don't have a choice. You just have to accept this. And that is why line 32 is so important, because it says every day. Line 38 and 39, probing away all privacy. Here, the cavity search. How much more demeaning can you get? Probing away, you are standing open to the enemy. And you will notice that it's not, there are other words beginning with the letter P. And the alliteration becomes progressive in their intrusion. And it reaches a peak in the word privacy in line 39. What a terrible experience if you had to have it once, but to endure this systematically, daily, it breaks you, it crushes your spirit. We go to our final stanza. I don't want fists and paws. He's had enough. I want that space. Look at the placement, which is so important. You're forced to move your eyes to find the next words. I want. You are absorbing the impact of his words. I want to be touched again. The entire stanza 6 is an emotional reminder of the importance of human interaction through the sense of touch. And to touch. So he wants to reciprocate the touching, not just you touching me, but me touching you back. Then in line 45 and 47, we see that there is a shift of emphasis to the first person, I. He wants to feel alive again. I want to feel alive. And that's the same as lines 8 and 9. Both statements show his need to feel human again after all these years of prison life. I want to feel alive. I want to say when I get out. And I think we have a sense of dominance in meaning coming across through the use of I. He wants to take control of the situation after being a victim for so long. Here I am, line 48 and 49. Please touch me. The tone is a dignified request. He is not begging. He is not pleading for something that will restore his humanity. But there is a definite sense of vulnerability in his request. The poem, in essence, says, when a long time is spent in prison, the prisoner loses his humanity through positive interaction with others. All he has experienced has been negative interaction. Prison is dehumanizing. I think that it's safe to say that Hugh, Lewin, expresses quite clearly, quite succinctly, what it's like to lose yourself in prison. And in our next video clip, we will focus on similar poems and how we can link this with other poems of a similar nature. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this made a lot of sense to you.